Before we begin, watch this video all the way to the end. Every detail matters, and the last moments pull the whole nightmare tight. Don't miss the dawn. Chapter 1, The Man in the Passenger Seat. I hadn't planned to carry anyone that night. I was just a driver, a ferry for things no one would miss, and people who wanted to go unseen. The desert had already cooled, the highway shimmer gone, when he opened my passenger door without asking and slid in with the calm of a man who had just stepped over a line he would never return from. "Put it in gear," he said, setting a duffel between his boots like he was protecting a child. There was black under his nails. He smelled of gasoline and sweet rot. His left eye ticked like a bad clock. I am not the kind of man who goes looking for trouble. Trouble finds me anyway, or maybe I am some kind of lighthouse for it. I told myself I'd kick him out at the next station, but there was no next station, not out there. Just the highway unwinding and the radio murmuring warnings about a prison yard disturbance miles behind us. We traded no names. Sometimes that's how survival works. We hit the junction, and he told me to take the frontage road toward the river. "We've got to pick up 3 others," he said. "Insurance." I didn't ask what he meant. I just kept both hands on the wheel and chased the ribbon of asphalt toward a strip of light that appeared as if the desert was exhaling stars onto the ground. That was the first glimpse of the Serpent's Hymn. It looked like a church that had been taught to sin. Chapter 2, Hostages and Hymns. The 3 others were a family with a flat tire broken down where the county line sign used to be. A mother gripping the steering wheel like it was a throat. A boy on the cusp of manhood, jaw set hard. A girl with a notebook pressed to her stomach like a shield. The man in my passenger seat tapped the barrel of a short pistol onto the window and told the mother to unlock her door. "Just a ride," he said. "We only need your faces and your prayers until midnight." I saw my reflection in the glass. I had been younger once. The boy in the back seat watched me like he wanted to find a seam to split me open. The girl scribbled something so fast her pencil snapped, and she didn't notice. We drove as a strange family into the red wash of neon. The building ahead gabled like a chapel, but wearing the skin of a roadhouse. Crossbeams of driftwood, lanterns flickering in cages. A sign throbbed. The Serpent's HYMN, sundown to sunup. Beneath it, in hand-painted letters, N.O. Donners. "What's a Donner?" the boy asked. "Someone who makes it," I said. It slipped out. Inside, the air was black cherry and beer, sweat, and something metallic that made the back of my tongue sting. Truckers, drifters, women with paint like war stripes. A band on a dais behind chicken wire-strummed chords that felt more like warnings than songs. And above the stage, nailed crooked, a wooden serpent wound around a broken organ pipe, its head angled toward the door like it was waiting for something it had tasted before. We found a booth near the back. My passenger set the duffel beneath the table and never let it out of his boots' reach. The mother sat opposite me, eyes on the neon cross pulsing above the bottles. The kids shoulder to shoulder, their reflection doubled in the pitted mirror behind the bar to make it look like we were already outnumbered. "We meet a man at midnight," he told me without looking up. "He helps us over the river. We leave with the music still playing." "Sounds easy," I said. His left eye ticked. "Everything that's going to kill you sounds easy at first." Chapter 3, The Dancer with the Snakeskin Smile. The lights dropped. The band slid into a rhythm that made my blood step. A woman came out with bare feet, her ankles wrapped in bells that didn't chime. She wore a skirt made of leather strips and coins, each coin with a hole punched through like an eye carefully blinded. Around her shoulders, a snakeskin shawl hung in a way that made it look alive when she breathed. She moved like water that had learned to pretend to be human. People who had been shouting prayed with their mouths open and forgot to say amen. The woman stepped onto the bar. She stepped onto the tables. She stepped onto our booth without seeming to bend the wood, and her eyes met mine for a second that felt like being lowered gently into a grave. I saw the mother's knuckles go white. The boy leaned forward with the hunger of the unblooded, and I felt something like pity slice through me, quick and clean. When the woman reached my passenger, she stopped. The bells at her ankles finally rang, a single note like a cracked chalice. She knelt, placed one palm against his cheek, and exhaled into his mouth as if returning something she had stolen from him years ago. His eyelids stopped ticking. "Midnight," he said, eyes on the stage clock. "We're almost through." The second hand jumped, and that is when the first glass shattered and no one cared. When the bartender smiled, and his gums were full of small, precise teeth better suited to a different kind of mouth. When the serpent carved over the bar writhed, only halfway in memory, and I understood the sign on the door had not been a joke. The dancer opened her mouth wider than a jaw should, and the coins on her skirt clattered like rain on a metal roof. She didn't have fangs. Fangs are too polite. She had a mouth made for scooping out a man's heat all at once. The first boy she touched didn't scream so much as deflate, and the people who had prayed began to pray again, much too late. Chapter 4. Bones under the floor. I've been in rooms where violence was a coin everyone had to spend. I've smelled plenty of copper. But this, the air turned to syrup, and the walls shivered, and something inside the bar agreed with something under the ground. The floorboards began to breathe. The mother grabbed her children, shoved them beneath the table. My passenger put one hand on the duffel and the other on his gun. The gun didn't matter. Bullets are for bodies that respect an ending. Patrons who weren't patrons anymore dropped from the rafters like lizards from sun-warm rocks. Every surface grew a face. A trucker swung a pool cue, and the pool cue snapped, and the broken end lodged in a throat that closed around it like with learning to chew. Someone flicked on a flashlight, and the beam cut a clean stripe through the air, carving smoke, and revealing dust that was not dust, tiny shed skins, paper-thin and drifting. "Back," I told the mother. "Kitchen. If there's a freezer." We moved in a crouch. I reached for the duffel, and my passenger yanked it away, eyes flat and unlit. He didn't want to lose whatever he'd come here to keep. I didn't want to lose what was left of my idea of people. We made it to a door stenciled with a cartoon pig. Inside was a walk-in that didn't get cold enough and a wall of knives that had not been washed properly for years. We jammed a crate of onions against the door, and the girl began to cry without sound, her shoulders curling inward like she was trying to shed herself. The boy found a bus tub of limes and salt and began to laugh. There was a window up high, half an arm's width across. The mother stood on a crate for a look and came down white. "Nothing but black," she whispered, like the buildings buried in a hill. The knives were wrong for what we needed. A blade for flesh means nothing when flesh has made other arrangements. I broke 2 mop handles and bound them with duct tape around a broken bottle's long neck. Improvised, like a prayer you don't mean until you do. "Who meets you at midnight?" I asked my passenger, though the clock on the wall had stopped that a minute before. "A man who walks the levee," he said. "A coyote who never leaves tracks. They say he was born without a shadow." He smiled, a little jitter deep. I thought I was paying a man. I didn't know I was feeding a church. The floor thumped. Something heavy dragged itself past the door, paused, sniffed, moved on. We held our breaths and counted. When you count together in a place like that, you become a single creature sharing one small lung. We didn't make it to 60. Chapter 5. The Hungrier Choir. They came in through the vent. Not as smoke, not quite. More like a rumor that learned how to hold a shape. The metal grate bent inward, and a hand that wasn't finished deciding how many fingers it should have reached into the room and found the light switch. It snapped the darkness off, and the bulb went bright enough to show us who we were. For alive and one half alive, because my passenger had stopped blinking again and was listening to something far away and very near. "We need light they can't swallow," I said, not knowing, hoping. I grabbed a crate, climbed, pulled at the bulb until it shattered between my fingers and burned me a little. The darkness came back relieved, like a muscle that had been clenched too long. The door bucked. The mother pressed her back against it, and the boy wedged a steel pan under the knob. The girl reached into her notebook, tore out a page, and thrust at me. It was a sketch of the bar from the outside, but she had drawn something beneath it, a pyramid sunk into sand, stair steps descending into black. She had added 1,000 little teeth, along the edges like waves. You saw it. I asked, when you looked out the window? I think so, she said, or it saw me and showed me. The building is only the mouth. The vent wheezed. The first of them flowed through, her ankles chiming. She was so beautiful, my stomach hurt. She smiled with that snakeskin mouth, and for a second, I had a thought I hate. What if this is what the desert truly wants for all of us to be poured back into it? The mother pulled a can of fryer oil and flung it. The creature blinked and stepped into it instead of out, toes sliding. The boy struck a match. The flame flared and clung, and the bells on her ankles screamed as metal learned a new language. She retreated into smoke that moved wrong, and the smoke moaned like a choir warming up for the hymn before the killing starts. We didn't wait. We pushed the crate from the window hole, and I climbed first, the metal edge biting my belly. Outside, the desert wasn't black after all. It was the color of old glass. We dropped one by one into an alley of stacked pallets and tires. The bar's walls were not wood on this side. They were stone. The stones had been bitten once, and then polished by tongues. The patterns weren't decorations. They were teeth marks. We ran along the wall, and the wall curved like the rim of something hungry. On the far side, the parking lot was a field of hunched cars like a herd dozing at a polluted waterhole, hoods warm, windshields reflecting 1,000 versions of our fear. The band hadn't stopped playing. The music was faster now, impatient. A long-haul trucker stood, smoking near his rig with a road map hanging from his back pocket. His jaw clicked open, then snapped shut as he saw us. Whatever he had been invited to, he had not RSVP'd yet. "You hear that?" He asked me like we were the only two left who spoke human. "Sounds like a hymn I used to know, and a joke I never got." "Headlights," I said. "Flares. Anything bright." He reached into his cab and tossed me a handful of emergency flares, fat and red with promise. I cracked one. Light spilled. Things that had begun to creep balked like dogs at an open oven. The creatures kept to the eaves, their mouths of disbelief wrinkled by smoke. Dawn comes late this season, the trucker said, looking east where a thread of silver had not yet started. "You got hours." "We don't," the mother said, voice steady now. "We have one idea that wears 100 masks. We need to pull one off." The building shifted under our feet. The parking lot cracked, a neat seam popping like a zipper. The bar wasn't a bar. It was a capstone. The girl's drawing was a map inked by something beneath us, and we were standing at the border between its lips. Chapter 6, Dawn's Price. The man who walked the levee arrived like a shadow that had changed its mind. He was tall, and until he got close enough to touch, he did not trouble the dust. He carried no bag, no weapon, no humor. He looked at my passenger at the duffel clenched like a second heart, and smiled as if he were finally picking up an overdue library book. "You're late," he said. "We had to stay for the show," my passenger replied, or the thing inside him did. Because once the levee walker spoke, my passenger's voice came from a split reed. The levee walker turned his face to me. "You brought daylight?" he asked, seeing the flares. "I brought regret." I said. "Those burn longer," he said with a smile that was not kind. "If you want to live, break the roof." "How?" the mother asked. He pointed to the serpent carving overhead. Up close, it was not a carving. It was a beam covering a gap, its belly riven with old nail holes. The trucker revved his engine. The girl tied a scarf over her hair like she was going to church. The boy picked up a tire iron. We moved together. That is something you learn when you want to outlive a story. Find a rhythm with strangers. We spiked flares into the cracks so color poured like coals. We threw chains over beams. We backed the rig until the cables sang. Something inside the bar howled a word made of vowels my throat refused. The levee walker cut his eyes upward, not helping hands in his coat, like he was counting. "This place eats what we drag to it," he said. "When it's full, it sleeps. Tonight you overfed it." "Who fed it first?" I asked. "Men like me," he said. "Men like him." He tipped his chin toward my passenger, who was tearing his own palm open and licking what came out with a devotion I had only ever seen in people who believed the next life hated them less than the present one. "Pull," the trucker yelled. The chain tightened, the beam groaned, The serpent's painted eye popped and rolled to the asphalt like a coin deciding whose pocket it wanted. They poured out of every broken place then. Barmaids with arms winging into leather. Bouncers whose chests cracked open and showed empty shelves. The dancer, not burned enough, moving on knees that bent the wrong way, with a grace that made my bones itch. I stepped forward with a flare in one hand and my ugly bottle-mop spear in the other. It wasn't courage. It was arithmetic. We held them long enough. The beam tore free with a bellow. Roof boards lifted. Night breathed in, and then the first knife edge of a false dawn cut the darkness. The east had taken its time, but at last it remembered us. The light didn't kill them like in the stories where the world is merciful. It simply made them honest. Their borrowed skins steamed off in strips, and underneath were shapes that had not decided what they wanted yet. All hunger and choice, and the sunlight forced them to pick, and they could not. They fell into pieces that tried to crawl back together and couldn't remember the arrangement. The dancer looked at me once, the way she had at the beginning, and smiled with a mouth that had decided to gentler teeth for a second. Then she was a shadow, then ash before even ash, and the bells on her ankles lay quiet. The levee walker watched with appreciation, as if we had performed a trick he had paid to see. My passenger clutched his duffel and started toward the levee walker with the steps of a child who has been promised a ride on a dangerous animal. The boy did not wait for me. He swung the tire iron. It connected not with the man's head, but with the duffel. It burst. Money fanned out across the lot in a small green flock. For a full breath, those bills lifted, took the light, became leaves, and then they were just paper that had been in the wrong place too long. The levee walker did not bend to gather them. He stepped back, offended at the human of it. The mother shouted something that was probably her son's name and probably also mine. The trucker laughed once. The laugh a man makes when a plan he did not believe in works. The building settled around us into the shape of a ruin. In the new light, the roadhouse was only the top of a staircase that ran down into a basin rimmed by thorn and bone. The parking lot was a crust on a mouth. Dawn, the levee walker said, sighing like a landlord at closing time, "Lucky we made our own," I said. He looked at me with curiosity that had no warmth. "No, you borrowed it. It always comes due." He left with the quickness of a shadow, finding an older object to throw itself against. We loaded into my car and the trucker's rig, and every working engine left roaring. We did not look back until we could not help it. From the ridge, we saw the building for what it was, a cap perched on a wound cut into the desert long before my father forgot my name, long before any of this. We crossed the river when the sun was full and honest. The mother held the girl's hand. The boy fell asleep with the tire iron on his lap. My passenger sat beside me, his left eye finally quiet, a smile on his lips that did not belong to any human I had known. He looked lighter without his money, as if a chain had been cut. "What now?" he asked. "Now you walk," I said, pulling over. "And you keep walking until the part of you that wants to go back dies of thirst." He got out. He didn't argue. Some losses are freeing. He walked into the heat shimmer, and for a moment I thought I saw another shape walking with him, taller, narrower, made of noon. I kept driving. I took the mother and her kids as far as I could, then farther. The road had never looked so full of blood and promises, and both of those tend to spoil fast. I am telling you this so you remember the shape of the place. If you ever see a roadhouse dressed in a church of stolen wood, if you ever hear a song that makes your blood step backward instead of forward, if a woman looks at you with a mouth that could be a nest for knives, leave. Don't wait for midnight. Don't let anyone put their bag under your table. Don't order anything that tastes like cherries and pennies. Drive until the sun is behind you, and then keep going. Because the desert has many mouths. Some sing the whole night, and dawn, when it comes, charges interest. If you made it to the end, thank you for riding through the night with me. Please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications so you never miss a new tale. Drop a like if this chilled you, leave a comment with your favorite moment, and share this video with someone who loves a good scare.